There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
So that kind of leads me into the next discussion point, and that is your workforce, because you've developed I think it's one of the hallmark recruitment strategies that I've seen in my career. And I think it could play into many different professions, but it's your pathway program. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because when we talk about community resiliency, you've built the foundation for your workforce coming from your community.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for recognizing. We were honored to win the Innovation Award, aptly named for yourself. For that pathway program, and it's been such a treat and a joy to watch these young people grow and develop in our industry. So you always hear community leaders, your homeowners association presidents. Every community has vocal activists that are within the community and, really just want to see a community thrive and a community grow and a community do all of these things. And, we talk so much about government services, fire and EMS, police and, police agencies and the sheriff's departments and all that, those services mirroring the community that they serve, right? An organization being reflective of the people that they serve. And, I was born and raised in Clayton County, graduated from the Clayton County public school system. My parents still live in Clayton County in the same house I grew up in. So I have a vested interest in this community. I have a vested interest in seeing it thrive and it become all it can be. And so when you start looking at building a workforce and you start looking at the workforce challenges that we were having, and I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about the applicant pool and I'm going through all these applicants and I'm like, what are we missing? Because none of these applicants have our community's vested interest at heart. They don't owe Clayton County anything. Their allegiance to the organization, their allegiance to this community, it's about what can you do for me versus this jurisdiction or that jurisdiction, or most of the time it boils down to who calls them first, right? So it's like whoever gets to me first wins. The lottery of me, the applicant. So when I started looking at, I'm like, if we really want to build an organization that reflects its community, an organization that's built of employees that has a loyalty to the community, would have a loyalty to the organization, then you got to do that from within. And what better way to go do that than the public school system? You've got, 30,000 kids sitting in a public school system that are just trying to figure out what they want to do with life. What am I going to do after high school? And in our community, for so many of them, college is not an option. They know it's not in their books. Their families can't afford it. Maybe they're struggling in school and their grades aren't going to allow it. There's a myriad of things that can contribute to why someone may not seek, post-secondary education, going into college, whether it's a trade school or whatever it may be. So we started looking at programming and talking with the school, and we're like, look, you have a version of a course where you teach kind of some intro to public safety, law, criminal justice. It was really more law and criminal justice heavy than anything. So we started talking with one of my commissioners here who was a student liaison at the school system. And I said, look, I really want to bring a program in that teaches these young men and women about the fire service, how to be fire and EMS. And then let's create pathway programs leveraging the existing CTAE programs, your career technical agricultural engineering programs that exist within most public school systems. They all have high school to trade type programming where you can get certifications in high school to enter the workforce or get a leg up in a trade school. So how do we leverage that? how do we build a similar program and then start building the next employee so that I don't have to go through a 4-month hiring long process to try and vet through all these candidates, or so that I don't have to try to break old habits from other organizations and retrain them how I want them to function here. Um, and so as I started thinking about it and working with the school system, it just became a no-brainer. Let's start building them out of the high school system. It has been tremendously successful. We started in 2 high schools. Going into the next school year, we're now going to be in 6 high schools, and we will expand into the final 2 high schools in the following school year. So, our program, COVID set us back 2 years. Obviously, with all the virtual learning, we were not able to get our kids here on our training ground, but that's such a key component to this is we embed them in this organization. They come to us for training as part of their school day. They're here with us for, I think we have them for 2.5 hours every school day. So they learn the discipline. They learn the culture. They learn what it means to be a public servant. And not only has it paid off for us at this point from a recruitment and thus far a retention strategy, but the feedback that we get from their parents, the feedback we get from their teachers saying, hey, they are so much more respectful throughout the rest of the school day. We see them now correcting issues in the hallways. They're taking leadership roles within their school. So you're not just changing your bottom line as a chief, you're changing the lives of these kids. Those graduation ceremonies are just so cool because we go to their high school graduation, we give them job offers, we give them their firefighter helmet. 2,000 parents lose their minds, because now they know that, hey, that kid is making almost 50 grand tomorrow. They graduate today, tomorrow they're an employee. And to see the pride that the parents and the kids have to stand on stage in front of their peers, because now they're getting something that none of their other graduating seniors are getting. And they're handed that nice shiny black fire helmet, and that's the payoff for me as a chief is being able to hand them that helmet at graduation and just say, hey, job well done, welcome to the family.
Yeah. Talk about a program that not only is changing the students' lives, but it's changing the lives of their families and the community. And talk about connecting with the community. I mean, your investment back into those children will be a reinvestment back into your organization because that connectivity is just incredible.
Absolutely. Well, and for so many of them, I always bring them in after graduation. I sit them down in my office and I'm like, so now that you're there, you're here, you've done everything we've asked you to do, you're in, what does this mean to you? And inevitably, they all say the same thing. And it speaks a lot about how they've been brought up and how they've been raised. And I can now give back to my parents. I can now help raise my younger brothers and sisters. I can now be a part of making sure that our family is supported. So they get unfairly painted, I think, sometimes as this, it's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. But when you take the time to sit down and talk to them, and they see that there's people that are willing to pour into them, you'll learn a lot it's not how they're cut out at all. A lot of our pathway students are working jobs while they're in high school. So they have a work ethic. You just got to give them the opportunity to go do and go be who they have the ability to be. And when you realize that they come out of high school and they're now the primary wage earner in their household of 7 or 6 or whatever that number may be, that's when it starts to sit in that you understand what you're doing. And all of the other things that program touches outside of just numbers on a roster, right? Or what's my vacancy rate? It's so much more than that. It's how is this affecting the median income? What does that do for this family? What does that do for this employee now, for their siblings? How does it help them? How does it improve the overall health and wellness of that household? And in turn, the more households that you can affect and the more households that you can replicate that success in, to your point, your community starts to rise, right? And then the feedback starts and the return on the investment starts. And then you start to see these young ones that went through that program and become successful say, hey, we want to mentor the next class of high schoolers. Well, who better than the high schooler that just graduated, right? I mean, they don't want to hear from me, the gray-haired dude in the corner, right, that graduated in the 80s. That's not who they want to hear from. But take that young firefighter that just went through what they went through the same struggles, can relate because maybe they came out of the same school. Maybe that firefighter was a role model, right? Because as a senior in their uniform, that ninth grader saw them and said, that's what I want to do. Now they're learning from that individual. So it's so much more that gets brought into this. And you've really got to understand the gravity about what you're doing. It's so much more than a recruitment and retention program. That's the category that it falls in, right? So that's the little thing that, when you want to go speak about it, it's a recruitment and a retention thing. But it's so much more than that. It's a community resilience initiative, right? It's a community sustainability initiative. It's an organization sustainability initiative. It's a community development initiative. It's an economic development initiative. Pick one. You can put it into whatever category you want, and it's going to prove its worth. And the numbers don't lie, and so I'm not creating it and sending these, the taxpayers' money back into Fulton, DeKalb, North Georgia, South Georgia. It's all coming right back into the community. So, their parents who are taxpayers are now their bosses. And that's what I tell them. My mother and father that still live in my community, they're my mother and father, but they're my bosses. So I have to go justify to my mom, why did I just spend, $1 million of her tax money on a new ladder truck or whatever the case may be. And every time she sees something new, she's like, did I pay for that? I'm like, yes, you did. And I graciously appreciate it. So I get held accountable on two different levels, but it's so much more. And, that's why I love talking about it. And I love getting out there and helping other chiefs work through the logistics of how to get this program up and running, because I know what it will do for your organization.
But this pathway program could be taken outside of the fire and emergency services.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the model is you can extrapolate this into whatever your industry is, and it's not specific to what we do. We just, we created a path for us to be able to hire. And we wanted to do it locally. So whatever your business is, if you have a true passion and desire to hire locally and build your community, go sit down with your local school board and say, hey, how do we leverage some of these other programs to create these opportunities, these other pathways? Use me and my organization and what we did as the template. Everything else is the same, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're in retail or you want to teach this, or you're in some other level service industry and you want to teach this. For years when we were coming up through school, you had, most of the guys were in auto mechanics or wood shop, and a lot of your female students were in cosmetology, right? So this isn't new. We've been teaching workforce skills going back, decades. So none of this is new. What we've done is taken it and applied it to our industry specific problem and some of the things that we are seeing, and how do we start to build off of those community expectations, which once again, you got to go be willing to ask and have that conversation. But any industry out there, pick one, and you can create a pathway to help you, but you're constantly reinvesting in your community, right? You're constantly bringing that back in. And if you're looking to build those sustainable communities and organizations, that's what you got to do. And it's easy to do. Is it a lot of work? Absolutely. But it all starts with building the right core team. You got to have that right core team. You got to have like-minded people who aren't going to get discouraged by the first setback. If your first board meeting doesn't go well, okay, so what did we learn? What is it? How do we need to repitch this and go back? Took me 4 years and 4 different board administrations to get it done, but I wasn't going to stop. I finally got the right mix of people, And when I got the right mix of people, boom,
Yeah.
there it went.
And now
right?
and now they couldn't take it back if they wanted to.
No, the public outcry would be huge.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody said, hey, we're doing away with the pathway program tomorrow, okay, great, but you're not going to be reelected. So, I mean, it's created this inertia within the community, and so many people talk about it, and every time it comes up, what Board of Education member doesn't want to tout that program? They can say, hey, our kids are coming out, guaranteed job offer, making X. Now, there's some skin in the game for the high schooler too, right? We don't give them anything. They earn it. You want to wear our patch and our uniform, you're going to earn it. And you're going to meet the same standard and the same bar that our recruits that are up on my training grounds right now are going to meet. And they understand that there's a real potential of failure. And if they fail this course, they don't graduate. It's that embedded into their curriculum. So for me, they have more skin in the game than the traditional applicant, because their high school diploma is riding on this. So if they're not successful, there's a chance they don't graduate on time. So they have more skin in the game coming into this than pretty much any other applicant that comes in, because you're talking about their future, having to stay in high school and then understanding the demands that we put on them as a part of that high school day. And then they got to go to work, and then they got to study, and then they got to do all of this other stuff. And knowing that if you don't meet a certain muster, we boot you from the program. So it's by no means a gimme. And we have those conversations up front with the parent and the student. So we get buy-in from day one, and we enforce it, just like we would here. So you building so much more of a well-rounded employee in whatever industry or service organization you may have.
Well, I think that level of accountability is what's needed so often in our school systems today. We don't see it in many cases. So, and I think you when you apply that level of accountability and the student knows that's what has to be met, most of them will meet it. And I think you've proven that. So, and I think, as you look at the landscape today with so many organizations that are struggling to find skilled workforce, especially on the trade level, they're really in high demand, but they just don't have the workforce to draw into. And so what a great program that they could take to their local high schools and, develop the next carpenters and the next welders and the next fabrication people. And, I would think some of our large corporations that are struggling with that would grab onto this idea and reinvest maybe a little bit of their time and talent into their local school system to develop that. So,
yeah, and you bring up a very good point, and there's so many executives. I mean, you hear it. It doesn't matter what news channel you watch. Somebody will be like, "Well, what do you think is contributing to this?" You're like, "We just can't find people that have the right skill or that want to work." Well, okay, then go build them. So if you can't find people that already have the right skill or that don't have the right thought processes or the right mentality or the right, fill in the blank that fits your mold or fits your organization or fits your company, then go build them. So, and that's kind of the thought process we leverage is I'm not liking the applicant that I'm getting, right? I don't think they're going to stick. I don't think they're going to, they don't know what they don't know. Right. So they just think, oh, firefighter looks cool on TV. I think I could do that. Then they get in here and they're like, oh, yeah, no, this ain't nothing like it is on television. And then they're out. Right. So we've mutually wasted a year of our lives, on this. So my thought was there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do it. And there's got to be a better way to recruit and more importantly, retain. So we just go build them. Right. It goes back to build it and they will come, the whole field of dreams. Right. So go build it. If you go build it, they will come. And they have. Our numbers are going up. More people are coming into because they see the success. The program is its own best advertisement. Those kids that are out there in that uniform now, that's our advertisement. We no longer have to go sell the program. No matter what shift I have, I say, hey, go put 3 of our pathways on a truck and send them down to the high school and watch what happens. Because they go stand in front of them. They say, I was you last year.
Yeah.
I was you 3 years ago. For you ninth graders, I was you 3 years ago wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Here I am. So if you want to be me, or if you want to do this, this is how you do it. And we're here to help you. We don't have to say a word anymore. It does itself. It manages itself. Their success, their happiness, the differences they've seen. And, when people, they always want to ask me, well, Chief, what has this program done? Don't ask me. Ask this young lady right here, firefighter, whoever, what has this done for you? How has this changed your outlook? Sit back and let them talk and hear it from them. And if that doesn't get your juices flowing to say, yeah, I got to go do that, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
You need to go ahead and get out of the chief's chair and let somebody else come on up and have a seat.
Yeah.
And figure out how to manage the organization. But they're sitting there waiting, right? You have all of these kids sitting in a classroom right now that don't have an idea or a clue what they're going to do when they graduate high school. And much like the reality of sitting in this chair is for any executive or any fire chief, they have the same reality experience the day they graduate high school and they wake up and they go, okay, now what? What do I do? If I know college isn't an option for me, what do I do? Where do I go? I don't know what I want to do. I haven't really poured into anything. So what now? What we're doing is taking that decision away from them. So the day they graduate, they say, all right, well, time to go to work. I got my career. I know what I'm doing. I got a steady income. I got a paycheck. I can provide transportation. I've got all of these things that so many kids are waking up that first Monday morning without having to go to school. That's not their concern.
Yeah.
They know what they're going to do for the next, little bit of their lives.
And that's why so many of them end up in trouble.
Exactly, because they become stagnant, right? That they don't know what to do with themselves. And, too much time on your hands as a young one is a dangerous thing when it's not shaped and when there's not somebody there to provide that oversight. So, it's for so many of them to not have to worry about that part. It's just such a relief from them and such a relief from their family. And for the organization, I know, 4 weeks after graduation, every May, here comes my next group of young ones.
Yeah.
And they're in and they're working. So we hire accordingly. And ultimately, my goal is, like I said, is just, that's where my people come from. And we bring them in that way. And that's what feeds this organization. And, once you hire exclusively from within your community, then how can you say the organization does not represent it?
Yeah.
They're all homegrown.
Yeah.
Right. I was born and raised here. I was homegrown. So I'm giving back to not only, a school system that poured into me, a community that poured into me, but building that next generation of leaders that grew up here and that was born here and have a vested interest in not only this community, but this organization.
Yeah.
So it becomes circular.
Yeah.
You just start building them in, and then, you let inertia take over and let the organization do what it does.
So final question today. What would you like to leave with people that are listening today that would help them to become a better leader? What are some takeaways that you would share from your experience?
For me, and there's so many that you could put after this, right? And it's don't be afraid. ... And you can take that in so many different directions, right? I think so many times as new leaders, new chiefs, new executives, fill in whatever, new CEOs, new CFOs, new COOs, whatever your leadership mantra may be. So oftentimes we get so focused on making sure we perform and we produce and that we show that we're effective leaders, that we lose sight of the vision, the drive, and the innovation that got us in the seat in the first place. And then we become so paralyzed by the fact that, well, I can't fail. If I fail, then I'm going to be seen as X. If I fail, then I may lose the respect of this. And even as myself, coming in as a new chief, that's always easier said than done. But what I can tell you after being in the seat for a little over 9.5 years now is I don't consider them failures, right? I consider them minor setbacks and adjustments. I use them as lessons as what didn't work, right? I tried something, it didn't work. I didn't fail. That version just didn't work. When you look at my pathway program, as I said, it took me 4 times. I didn't fail because it's been successful. I just didn't do it right the first time. I didn't have the right mix of people. I didn't have the right personalities at the table. I didn't have the right understanding at the table. Doesn't mean I failed. It just means I didn't have the right mix. Now, I tell people all the time, we have Heinz 57 sauce because the first 56 attempts didn't work. So we're at Heinz 57, right? Those aren't 56 failures. They're just 56 bad recipes or whatever the case may be. So you got to set your mind on a path to not be afraid to whatever. Don't be afraid to have the conversation that you need to have with an employee, with your leadership, with your community, with your organization as a whole. Don't be afraid to do what your gut is telling you to do. Don't be afraid to go after that next big innovation, whatever it is. I tell people a lot, and sometimes this rubs folk the wrong way, but I try to bring it back as best I can. Is I'm all about best practices, and I'm all about looking at organizations and saying what works well for that organization. But at the end of the day, I have to figure out what works well for Clayton County and what works well for the citizen base that I have to provide service to. And you can take all of these different things that work well within all these communities, but you have to morph them to be specific to your community and your challenges and your organization. When I look at providing EMS service to my community, I can't leverage the things that work well in the northern part of our country, the things that work well in the western part, because our demographics are different. Our comorbidities are different. The health challenges are different. The access to healthcare challenges are different. So I have to provide service in a different manner. The types of services have to be in a different manner. We can learn from each other, and we can take all of the things that have worked well across the country, but you can't be afraid to morph those into your own thing. And sometimes, we'll take it, and it's easy to try and take a cookie cutter deal and try to make it fit on your organization. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it fails miserably because those weren't truly your problems. Those weren't truly what the issues your organization had were. It was what your assumption was, right? But it wasn't reality. So if you go back to Lee's thoughts on diversity and inclusion, and you apply his thought processes of your organization isn't inclusive until they say it is. Well, don't be afraid to go ask them, or more importantly, don't be afraid of what they're going to tell you, right? Because in some instances you may have a good finger on the pulse, and in a lot of other instances, you're going to be way off base. But you cannot be afraid to accept that. You cannot be afraid to sit down as a leader and have that conversation, because here's the thing. Leadership is not an adversarial process, right? I'm simply here to guide this organization forward. In order for me to do that, I have to understand what the needs of my people are. I have to understand what the needs of my community are. I have to understand what the expectation of my elected leadership is. If I don't understand any of that, or if I don't know what that is, I cannot effectively do my job. And I think that's, when you look at it across the country and you say, okay, what's the average lifespan of a fire chief in their job? And you look at that 3 to 5 year mark. Why is that? Is it just because I'm at the twilight of my career? Unfortunately for me, I got in this gig when I was 41 years old. I still got a little bit to go in my career. So I'm hoping and praying that statistic doesn't hold up as a new chief for me. I'm like, good Lord, what am I going to do at 44? I can't start this thing over again. If I'm on a 3 to 5 year time window, that can't be real. But it boils down to don't accept industry norms or don't accept industry standards as your own norm and or standard. Do what works for your people. Do what works for your community, and then go share that with other people. Say, look, you've brought up several good points here. The Pathway program, which I built specifically for us, but it's transferable to all of these other platforms and all of these other agencies. You just need to tweak it, but don't be afraid to go do it. So many fantastic ideas get lost, or they never get brought to fruition because so many people say, I just don't have the time, energy, or nobody's really going to buy into it. You don't ever know until you go ask. But if you truly believe in it, don't let it go. You just ain't found the right mix of people yet. And that's all you need. You got to get the right mix of people. So don't let that first failure, if you got to call it that, set you back. Say, okay, well, that didn't work. So we know this way does not work. So let's step over here and let's go it again. What can we do different this time? And if that doesn't work, okay, look at your first attempt, look at your second attempt. Are there any commonalities? If not, what can we do different? And let's go again. If you believe in it, go do it. And don't let anybody ever tell you that it won't work. Because I can tell you it can. And it will. But you got to be the impetus behind it. You got to be the driver behind it. And, you may get to a point where somebody tells you, no, it ain't going to happen. Okay, so let me go find another way, right? There's always another way. And, we make choices every day out there. And sometimes we choose not to do anything, but you still made a choice. So at the end of the day, it's coming back to you as that leader sitting in the corner of whatever building you're sitting in, whether that's a high rise somewhere, whether that's a fire station somewhere, whether that's a government building somewhere, whatever executive office you're sitting in. Not only does the buck stop with you, but it starts with you as well. So don't be afraid to jump out there and go do what your gut's telling you to do. And that's what I always tell people. It's three simple words. Don't be afraid. Well, four. Don't be afraid to fill in the blank. And then just take it from there and run with it. The rest is just fun.
Yeah, well, it's great advice. I would add one, and that would be don't be afraid to change.
Amen to that.
Yeah,
you always hear change is inevitable, but change is necessary. And it's not, you could say, don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to evolve. Don't be afraid to accept a new norm, or don't be afraid to be open, to all of that. Because as we talked about earlier, is your job is to keep yourself and your organization relevant. And you don't do that by, the old 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Doesn't get you there.
No.
That's not a flattering mantra. And maybe that is one way to get in that 3 to 5 year band.
Yeah.
Of a chief executive. So it's all about our people.
Yeah.
Whether it's our citizens or whether it's our employees. They're not going to change. We're the ones that have to change. We're the ones that have to evolve. We're the ones that have to change the way we do business and change the way we manage our people. And the sooner we figure that out as an industry and as a service, I think the better off we'll be, and we'll start to kind of see the industry as a whole thrive. And I think it can start to serve as a role model because, if a government entity can change and evolve and improve itself, anybody can.
Yeah.
Having to deal with a lot of the things that we have to deal with as government employees. But at the end of the day, this job is about people. It's not about the calls. It's not about the flashy lights, the uniform. It's just about the people, both the ones in the uniform and the ones out of it. And once we figure out how to do that and manage that and accept that, then off to the races we go. We've been our own worst enemy, for a long time about the profession and where we sit. A lot of the hiring practices and a lot of the staffing issues we're seeing now are, to an extent, some of our own doing. And we got to accept that and realize that and then figure out how to fix that.
Yeah.
If we can be of any assistance along the way, always willing to sit down and talk and just say, hey, what's worked well here? Can't say it's going to work well for you and your organization, but a version of it will. But I guarantee you one thing, it'll be better than the nothing that you might be doing now.
Yeah. Very
so,
true.
There's always, that next step. And there's always that. But, the beauty behind your whole podcast series is just simply the basic premise of being willing to have the conversation, right? And being willing to sit down and share ideas and be willing to talk about, where have you struggled as a leader? What made you a better person? What made you a better leader? And, I think if more of us are willing to sit down and have that conversation, especially with some of our young leadership coming in, they've got a hard road ahead of them.
They do.
We need to make sure that we, as leaders, prepare them for that next step and that next phase of their career, and make sure that the fire service we all love and hold dear is relevant and is sustainable, and apply that to whatever career path you may be in. This listening to this podcast, it's all relevant, right? Our job is to stay relevant, and it's the lessons learned are applicable across any management paradigm. It's just, we've been in the emergency services industry, but that's just the path we chose. Fill in the blank with your industry. For allowing me the opportunity to have another fruitful conversation with you about leadership and management, and look forward to many more. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been a true pleasure.
Well, thanks, Chief. Sure appreciate it. Thanks for being on today.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.